I first came across Professor Pyg as a crucified corpse hanging upside down in Batman 666. And honestly, that is a ridiculous sentence to say out loud. Batman 666 was a dystopian future where Damian Wayne had grown up into a much more brutal Batman. Gotham already felt completely broken in that timeline, and then Morrison casually throws Laszlo Valentine's body into the background like some horrible warning sign for what's still to come. And even though it's only one image, it stuck with me immediately. There's something deeply eerie about it. You instantly get the feeling that this guy was not normal, even by Gotham standards. But the version of Professor Pyg that genuinely disturbed me showed up later in the main continuity in 2009. That's when Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely fully introduced him in Batman and Robin. And man, every time I reread those issues, Pyg still gets under my skin. Honestly, when people talk about the new generation of Batman villains, characters introduced in the 2000s and beyond, it's usually the big names that dominate the conversation, right? The Coat of Owls, Red Hood, maybe Hush, characters who got massive adaptations in games, animated movies, TV shows. And look, I get it, I love those characters too. But Professor Pyg always felt different to me. He is almost like this hidden nightmare buried deeper in Gotham's rogues gallery. He has never been as mainstream as Joker or Scarecrow, but every single time he appears, the story becomes genuinely uncomfortable, in a way very few Batman villains can. And if newer fans are only now discovering him through newer comics or adaptations, trust me, yes, he really is always that disturbing. So at this point in Gotham, Bruce Wayne is believed to be dead right after the events of Final Crisis. Dick Grayson has stepped into the Batman role, and honestly I love this era because Dick's Batman feels completely different from Bruce's. He is lighter, more hopeful, less intimidating, but then you pair him with Damian Wayne of all people, Bruce's biological son, raised by the League of Assassins, and suddenly things get messy. Damian is basically a 10-year-old assassin trying to learn how not to kill people. So their partnership is already tense from the beginning. Dick wants restraint, Damian wants results. And right in the middle of all this chaos, Professor Pyg shows up and immediately feels different from every other villain around him. It starts with this strange new designer drug spreading through the city, distributed by these weird circus-themed enforcers speaking in a creepy carnival slang. And honestly, I love the way Morrison introduces all of this. Batman and Robin first encounter Mr. Toad during this insane Batmobile chase through Gotham. The whole sequence is chaotic, loud, and honestly kind of fun in that classic comic book way. They eventually take him down and hand him over to the police. But the actual suppliers, a group of Russian mobsters, manage to escape with the shipment and their families. One of them is Sasha, a teenage girl who came to Gotham with her father, hoping for a better life. Instead, they get trapped in something horrific. That same night, while the family is desperately packing to leave the city, there's a knock at the door. And this is where the story stops feeling like a superhero comic and starts feeling like a straight-up horror. Professor Pyg walks in shirtless, drenched in sweat, wearing that horrible pink pig mask. And somehow, the mask looks ridiculous and terrifying at the same time. Behind him are the Dollotrons, these silent, faceless human dolls that honestly might be one of the creepiest things Morrison ever created. But what really makes the scene disturbing is the way Pyg talks. He doesn't scream, he doesn't rant. He sounds calm, gentle even, almost like a caring doctor trying to help somebody. While Sasha watches in horror, Pyg restrains her father and begins one of his procedures. He melts one of those blank doll masks directly onto the man's face, literally burning away his identity. And the whole scene feels deeply violating. That's what separates Pyg from a lot of Batman villains for me. This isn't flashy comic book violence. It feels intimate, personal, like body horror disguised as art. And unlike Joker Venom or Mad Hatter Mind Control, this damage isn't temporary. Pyg physically alters people with scalpels, chemicals, and surgery. He permanently reshapes their bodies and identities to these horrifying works of art. Even the survivors are left scarred for life, physically and psychologically. And do you know what the scariest part is? There isn't really some giant master plan behind it. He's not trying to conquer Gotham like Ra's al Ghul. He's not creating chaos for the sake of a joke like Joker. Pyg hurts people because he genuinely believes he's making them beautiful. That's it. That's the motivation for his violence. And somehow, that makes him even more terrifying. Because Gotham is full of monsters, but most of them have patterns, whereas Pyg feels unpredictable. One minute he's singing weird opera nonsense like the pig will make you perfect. The next he's babbling nursery rhymes while holding a bone saw. The guy doesn't even feel like a supervillain half the time. He feels like something that wandered out of a nightmare. And what makes all of this worse is that Laszlo Valentine wasn't always Professor Pyg. Originally, he was a brilliant scientist connected to secretive organizations like Spiral. He developed neurotoxins and mind control compounds, but eventually exposure to his own chemicals completely shattered his psyche. Some versions of the backstory also imply paranoia, torture, and constant self experimentation pushed him over the edge. What came out on the other side was Professor Pyg, a man obsessed with the myth of Pygmalion. And that's actually where the name Pig comes from. A lot of people assume it's just because of the pig mask, which definitely helps make him horrifying. But the real reference is the Greek myth of Pygmalion, the sculptor who fell in love with his own creation. Laszlo basically sees himself that way, an artist trying to sculpt what he believes is perfection. The difference is that instead of clay or marble, he uses living people. To him, people are just raw materials. By lobotomizing them, drugging them with chemicals, and sealing their faces behind permanent doll masks, he believes he is creating perfection. And the truly disturbing part is that he's sincere. He genuinely sees himself as a savior, an artist, a healer, not a monster. That broken conviction is what makes every scene with him feel so uncomfortable, because it starts echoing real life horror. It reminds me of doctors in concentration camps performing experiments while convincing themselves they are advancing science, or cult leaders mutilating their followers in the name of spiritual purity or perfection. That's the kind of horror Pig taps into. Anyway, back in the story, things escalate really fast after that. Pig's Circus of Strange, this horrifying crew of deformed circus-themed henchmen, launch a brutal assault on the GCPD to free Mr. Toad. And what starts as a rescue mission quickly turns into a massacre. The villains are tearing through the station, cops are dying everywhere, and Damien immediately jumps into chaos with lethal force. And honestly, this is one of the reasons I love the Dick and Damien dynamic so much. Dick is trying to be a more controlled and hopeful Batman. Damien is still operating like an assassin. So while Dick is trying to contain the situation carefully, Damien goes all in. His recklessness ends up getting several police officers killed in the crossfire, and you can feel the tension between them getting worse by the second. Later, they discover Mr. Toad dead in his cell anyway, with another domino left behind as one of those cryptic clues Morrison keeps scattering throughout the story. Damien gets frustrated with Dick's approach and storms off on his own, following the trail to an abandoned carnival, which honestly feels like the most perfect possible setting for Professor Pyg. Rotting rides, broken lights, a creepy empty carnival in the middle of Gotham. It already feels wrong before Pyg even appears, and once Damien gets there, things immediately go bad. The Dollotrons capture him and strap him to a chair, completely helpless in front of a man who wants to improve him through mutilation. At the same time, Dick is racing through Gotham, trying to piece together what Pyg is actually planning. And this is where the story suddenly becomes even more disturbing, because the Dollotrons themselves are part of the plan. They are carrying an airborne narcotic, basically a virus-like drug that spreads incredibly fast and destroys people's sense of identity. Pyg plans to unleash it across Gotham and create an entire city of obedient puppets. That idea is terrifying, not because of death, but because of losing yourself completely. Your personality, your identity, your humanity, all erased in the name of perfection. And again, Morrison keeps grounding the horror in things that feel disturbingly real. It brings to mind the forced lobotomies performed in asylums during the mid-20th century, where doctors genuinely believed they were helping patients by destroying parts of their personalities. Or modern cases of extreme body modification taken to horrifying delusional levels. There's a reason Pyg feels so uncomfortable compared to most Batman villains. A lot of his horror already exists in real life. Then we get one of the most unhinged scenes in the entire comic. Damien wakes up inside Pyg's lair, and the whole place feels like a fever dream. Professor Pyg starts performing his frantic, sweat-soaked dance in front of something called Mommy Made of Nails. This grotesque effigy made from wood, barbed wire, and a cracked female mask. The thing looks absolutely nightmarish, and while he dances, Pyg starts rambling about crucifixion hugs, goddesses, pain as beauty, and how only his surgeries can heal the world. It's chaotic, it's uncomfortable, and honestly, Frank Whiteley's art makes the entire scene feel sweaty and diseased. You feel trapped in the room with Damien. Pig prepares another molten doll mask and gets ready to erase Damien the same way he erased Sasha's father. And the entire sequence feels less like a Batman comic and more like a psychological horror. It honestly reminds me of real serial killers like Ed Gein, people who turned human bodies into grotesque art while living inside their own completely detached reality. Thankfully, Damien manages to slip free from his restraints and fights back with the brutal assassin training. And in that chaos, Sasha, who has still retained fragments of her personality despite everything Pig did to her, manages to set Pig's chest on fire. Pig flees into a runaway funhouse cart while Damien chases after him. Then Dick finally arrives in time to land his massive punch that completely shatters the Pig mask. And underneath it, you finally see Laszlo Valentine's broken, sweating face. Together, Dick and Damien defeat him. And honestly, it's one of the first moments where they really start feeling like a true Batman and Robin partnership. But even after Pig loses, the story doesn't let you feel comfortable because the damage he causes is permanent. The Dollotrons masks can't safely be removed without peeling off the victim's face along with them. Just imagine how horrifying that is. Most of the victims are left permanently disfigured and psychologically shattered, and Shasha gets hit the hardest. Her father was murdered in front of her. Her face is permanently altered, and she is completely traumatized by everything she's endured. She ends up furious at Pig for destroying her life, but also angry at Batman and Robin for not stopping it in time. That anger makes complete sense. Eventually, that rage consumes her. Later in issue 7, Jason Todd, operating as Red Hood, finds her in this broken state, and instead of helping her heal or trying to give her a normal life, he turns her into his sidekick Scarlet. It's like she can never fully escape what Pig did to her. Even after he is defeated, his influence keeps ruining lives. That's another reason Professor Pig works so well as a villain. His damage lingers. People don't just walk away from him and return to normal. Pig is eventually imprisoned in Blackgate, but he returns later in Morrison's run, especially during Batman and Robin Must Die, where his surgical obsession and fractured mind continue to haunt Gotham. And honestly, across all these appearances, Professor Pig stands out as one of Batman's most disturbing enemies because his evil feels so personal. He doesn't want to kill you for money, he doesn't want revenge, he doesn't even really want chaos. He wants to fix you by destroying everything that makes you human. And that idea is deeply unsettling. Because in a city full of theatrical supervillains, Pig feels uncomfortably close to real psychological horror. He feels like what happens when delusion, intelligence, and surgical skills collide in the worst possible way. I still think Professor Pig could carry an entire Batman horror series by himself. Gotham's citizens are already used to people like Joker or Two Face at this point. That's almost normal for them. But imagine hearing there is a deranged surgeon somewhere in the city kidnapping people and turning them into living dolls. Realistically, the entire city would be terrified to leave their homes. And maybe that's why Pig sticks with people so much. In a universe full of monsters and super criminals, there's something uniquely horrifying about a sweaty man in a pig mask waddling towards you while singing off key nursery rhymes. That's nightmare fuel. So, what do you think? Does Professor Pig rank among the creepiest Batman villains for you? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like if this deep dive into his horror resonated with you. Subscribe for more dark comic explorations, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay imperfect because that's what keeps us real.